Who is Caiaphas? He was the high priest that sentenced Jesus to die. We not only know he existed, we have his burial box.
The biggest trial in the history of mankind happened over 2,000 years ago, and it involved a man who played a key role in sentencing Jesus to death, the High Priest Caiaphas. Now, something incredible has come to light. Archaeologists have found Caiaphas's burial box, and with it, an ancient manuscript that might just be his last testament. This discovery has everyone talking. Scholars and theologians are both excited and skeptical. Was this really the last testament of Caiaphas? If so, what secrets does it hold about Jesus Christ? Join us as we dive into what Caiaphas revealed about Jesus in his last testament and see how it might change what we know. The discovery and content of Caiaphas's testament. In December 1990, something incredible was unearthed near Jerusalem that shook up our understanding of history. Workers were bulldozing land in the Peace Forest, just a stone's throw from the ancient city, getting ready to build a water park. Instead of just dirt and rocks, they stumbled upon an ancient tomb. Excited by their new archaeological discovery, they quickly alerted the Israel Antiquities Authority and called them to come and check it out. Inside this tomb, seasoned archaeologists found several ossuaries, which are basically bone boxes where people stored the remains of the deceased. But two of these ossuaries had something special. They were inscribed with a name that grabbed everyone's attention: Caiaphas. If you've ever read the New Testament, that name might ring a bell. Caiaphas was the high priest during Jesus' trial and crucifixion, and here were these boxes, possibly holding the bones of that very man. One ossuary in particular had the inscription Joseph Bar Caiaphas. Now, Bar in Aramaic means son of, but it can also mean descendant of or from the family of. So Joseph Bar Caiaphas is essentially Joseph Caiaphas, the same guy we read about in the Bible. And the bones inside? Studies suggest they belong to a man around 50 years old who lived around 2,000 years ago. Could this be the same Caiaphas who played such a crucial role in the events leading up to Jesus' death? It sure seems possible. Now here's where things get really interesting. In the Gospel of John, Caiaphas is mostly portrayed as a villain. He's also said to have made an unforgettable statement about Jesus' death at a meeting of the Sanhedrin, saying it would be for the good of the nation. A comment many people believed to be a prophecy. But was this really a prophecy or a political statement? Before we go on to answer that, let's dig in to see what other interesting discoveries were made alongside Caiaphas' remains. News of a testament believed to have been written by the Jewish high priest before his passing and pronounced to be Caiaphas' last testament has also been made public. In his testament, Caiaphas reveals terrifying secrets he knew about Jesus and shares troubling insights into his thoughts about the Messiah and his actions during that period. To put it mildly, the tale of how Caiaphas' final testament was found is astounding. The written work was discovered in a room under an old synagogue in Jerusalem, a location linked to prominent priestly lineages from the time of the Second Temple. It was written on parchment scrolls using Aramaic, which was the common language of that era. Upon initially viewing the texts contained in the final testament of Caiaphas, academics and archaeologists were concerned it might be a fake, so they started making efforts to verify the authenticity of the discoveries. To confirm the bones, bone analysis was carried out and several historical accounts were referenced, including those of Jewish historian Flavius Josephus. Josephus's writings confirmed that the given name of Caiaphas was Joseph. As for the manuscript, its estimated period of origin is the early 1st century AD, according to the results of numerous linguistic examinations and extensive carbon dating procedures. After rigorous testing and analysis, experts finally confirmed its authenticity of this testament, and what it contains is nothing short of extraordinary. The high priest accounts of his meetings with Jesus, his struggles with the established order, and a vision that haunted him after Jesus' death. Through the contents of this testament, Caiaphas shows us a side of himself that has never been seen by history. We see a man torn between his ideals and his charisma, revealing a side of him that contrasts sharply with the rigid, unyielding figure we see in the Gospels. Caiaphas' testament offers a surprising glimpse into his interactions with Jesus. To To add some context, Caiaphas and his father-in-law, Annas, were high priests during the life and ministry of Jesus, and they were key players in the political system at the time of the crucifixion. The Jewish leaders brought Jesus to them first, before handing him over to the Romans. How much Caiaphas actually knew or cared about Jesus is hard to say, as each of the Gospels portrays his involvement in different ways. But according to this testament, Caiaphas was deeply conflicted about the role he played in Jesus' fate. In his writings, Caiaphas describes Jesus as a charismatic and compelling figure. Jesus' teachings had an impact, even resonating with some members of the Sanhedrin. Caiaphas recounts several meetings with Jesus where they debated religious law and theology. These discussions left a mark on him, and there are supportive theories that Caiaphas questioned the established order as opposed to the image of someone blindly enforcing the rules that many of us have. Perhaps the most startling revelation in Caiaphas's testament is his claim of having a vision after Jesus' death. In this vision, he saw the resurrected Jesus predict the destruction of the temple and the suffering that would soon come to Jerusalem. This vision haunted Caiaphas, leading him to believe that he had made a terrible mistake in condemning Jesus. The contents of this testament are likely to spark heated religious discussions. For one, the vision of Caiaphas offers more proof of Jesus' divinity and the resurrection to Christians. However, it contradicts the conventional Jewish understanding of the high priesthood and its significance in the Passion. Without any doubt, Caiaphas was a key figure in history, but discovering his tomb and these ossuaries adds a whole new layer to our understanding of who he was and what he might have been thinking. In biblical history and archaeology, these discoveries are monumental. It isn't just about the bones of a long-dead priest. Rather, it's about piecing together the puzzle of history and trying to understand the motivations and actions of a man who was at the heart of one of the most significant events in Christianity. If Caiaphas is famous for recommending Jesus' death sentence, and this testament says he was conflicted in his decision-making and made a colossal mistake, then there's need for contextual clarity. So, let us now examine the records to understand if Caiaphas' comments were really a prophecy or a political power play. To do this, we must first revisit the historical account and theological significance of Caiaphas as it relates to the life of Jesus. The historical and theological context of Caiaphas. According to the historical writings of Josephus, in the year 6 AD, the Roman legate of Syria, Quirinius, appointed a man named Ananus to the position of high priest in Jerusalem. This Ananus is likely the high priest Annas mentioned in the New Testament, who was a father-in-law to Caiaphas. Though it wasn't recorded in the Bible, in that period of history, high priests were installed and removed by Roman rulers. So, rather than waiting until the death of Annas to appoint a successor, the Roman governor Valerius Gratus deposed Annas in 15 AD and appointed Annas' son Eleazar, who, according to Josephus, had already served as high priest once before. Eventually, after deposing and appointing another high priest, Valerius Gratus appointed Joseph Caiaphas as high priest in 18 AD. While the Bible is full of details about the life and ministry of Jesus, little is known concerning the life of Caiaphas, and aside from noting his arrival and departure, Josephus' account is silent about Caiaphas, leaving us with biblical accounts on the life of the Jewish high priest. The Gospels record that Jesus hails from Nazareth, one of the poorest provinces at the time, and was born in Bethlehem during the reign of King Herod the Great, a client king under Roman rule. Herod's oppressive governance and the overall Roman occupation created a tense atmosphere in Judea, where many Jews longed for a Messiah who would liberate them and restore Israel's kingdom. By estimation of dates and history, it would appear that Caiaphas was significantly older than Jesus. Following his appointment in 18 AD, several years after the recorded birth of Jesus, Caiaphas was already the established high priest when Jesus began his public ministry, around 14 BC to 46 AD, but their paths would cross as their fates were seemingly intertwined. Therefore, understanding every bit of the historical detail while taking into context the political and societal settings of that era would help us really understand what incredibly difficult political and social pressures both men had to navigate and the significance of this recent discovery. Around the age of 30, When Jesus began his public ministry in Judea, the region was governed by the Roman prefect Pontius Pilate, while Galilee was under Herod Antipas, another client king. Judea during the time of Jesus was a place of tension, complexity, and expectation. Situated under the control of the Roman Empire and with Jerusalem as its economic capital, the Jewish people had a mixed relationship with their Roman rulers, constantly living in the fear of chaos. Despite their subjection to Roman control, they fiercely held on to their religious beliefs and traditions. Life in Judea was tough for most people as the people battled sickness and poverty. The Jewish society was also divided over how to deal with Roman rule. Some Jews accepted it, hoping to maintain peace and avoid further bloodshed. Others, like the Zealots, were determined to resist, even if it meant violence and rebellion. This led to frequent unrest and revolts, making the region a hotbed of tension. Understanding the people and politics in Jesus' time is relevant to drawing connections between himself and Caiaphas. It would also help us know why Caiaphas had to recommend Jesus' execution and ultimately the present-day relevance of the High Priest's last testament. Let's dive into the different groups that were part of Jewish society during Jesus' time because they played a huge role in shaping the environment around him. First up, we have the Pharisees. They were known for their strict adherence to the Torah, which is basically the Jewish law, and they also had a bunch of oral traditions that they followed. The Pharisees believed in the resurrection of the dead and in the existence of angels. They were the religious conservatives of their time, really serious about sticking to the rules and keeping Jewish traditions alive. A lot of people respected them for their devotion, but they also clashed with Jesus on several occasions because he challenged some of their interpretations of the law. Then there were the Sadducees. These guys were different from the Pharisees in a lot of ways. For one, they didn't believe in the resurrection of the dead, which was a big deal because it set them apart from other Jewish groups. The Sadducees were mostly from wealthy, priestly, and aristocratic families, so they had a lot of influence, especially when it came to the temple in Jerusalem. They were conservative, but not in the same way as the Pharisees. They didn't really buy into the oral traditions or the supernatural stuff like angels and demons. They were more focused on maintaining their power and keeping things stable, which made them more willing to work with the Romans. Speaking of working with the Romans, this brings us to Herod. Herod was the king of Judea, but he was appointed by the Romans, so his rule wasn't exactly by popular demand. He was a pretty brutal leader, known for being paranoid and even having some of his own family members killed. As mean as he was, he's famous for his building projects, including the expansion of the Second Temple in Jerusalem. This temple was the center of Jewish religious life, so even though Herod wasn't loved by everyone, his work on the temple was a big deal. Now, let's talk about the Essenes. This group was a bit different from the Pharisees and Sadducees because they were more like a monastic community. The Essenes lived in isolated places like Qumran, where they practiced strict purity laws. They were all about living a pure life, away from the corruption they saw in the rest of society. On the more radical end of the spectrum were the Zealots. These were the revolutionaries who weren't interested in talking or making deals with the Romans. They wanted to overthrow them, and they were willing to use violence to do it. The Zealots were all about Jewish independence and were completely against Roman rule. Their passion for their cause often led to uprisings, and they were a thorn in the side of both the Romans and the more moderate Jewish groups. Given the socio-political setting of Judea, the Jewish religious leaders, including the Sanhedrin Council, collaborated with the Romans to maintain their authority and suppress any potential threats to the status quo. This would mean that the position of a high priest is deeply as political as it is spiritual. As the high priest, Caiaphas was the presiding authority in the Sanhedrin, the Jewish ruling council, and was also likely a member of the Sadducees, a Jewish religious denomination. He had to maintain order in Jewish society and ensure that nothing the Jews did would anger their Roman rulers. Balancing these duties made Caiaphas a key figure in the events leading up to the crucifixion of Jesus as he navigated the delicate and dangerous intersection of faith and politics in a volatile time. So, what does all this have to do with Jesus? Well, Jesus came onto the scene in a very complex and tense environment. The different Jewish groups all had their own ideas about what the Messiah would be like and what he would do. Jesus' actions and teachings often put him at odds with the Pharisees and Sadducees. The Pharisees saw him as a threat to their interpretation of the law, while the Sadducees were worried about the political implications of his growing popularity. The Zealots might have been disappointed that Jesus wasn't leading a violent revolt against the Romans, but some probably hoped he was the kind of Messiah who would eventually do just that. And for the Essenes, Jesus' emphasis on purity and the kingdom of God might have resonated with their own beliefs, even if he didn't share their isolationist lifestyle. Jesus' teachings, which focused on the imminent kingdom of God, suggested a new social and political order centered on divine rule rather than the established earthly powers. He is often associated with the poor, the marginalized, and those considered unclean, defying the rigid social hierarchy of the time. His message and growing influence alarmed both Jewish and Roman authorities, who viewed him as a political threat, and they sought to neutralize him. Their plots would then get into gear at the time of Lazarus' death. Lazarus and his sisters lived in Bethany, a place close to Jerusalem, and when Lazarus fell seriously ill, word was sent to Jesus, who at the time was in Galilee. By the time he arrived, Lazarus had been dead for 4 days. Now, Jesus had gained popularity performing miracles, but his teachings and miracles weren't without opposition, especially by the religious leaders who did not share his belief. However, Jesus' next act shook the socio-political foundations and the belief system of Judea at the time. According to the Gospels, Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead, and no one could deny that raising Lazarus from the dead, and when Jesus did just that, it left no room for doubt among those who witnessed it. While many believed after seeing what Jesus did, others ran to the Pharisees to report what had happened. The miracle set off alarm bells among the Jewish leaders, especially Caiaphas and the Sanhedrin. Jesus' growing popularity, fueled by such undeniable miracles, threatened their authority and made them worry about possible Roman retaliation. Caiaphas and the other leaders knew they had to act. They feared that if they allowed Jesus to continue, his influence could lead to chaos, which might provoke the Romans to crack down on the Jewish people, potentially destroying their nation. This fear of losing their power and their place under Roman rule was a key factor in the decision to conspire against Jesus. It was then Caiaphas made his famous statement about Jesus' death. Therefore, Caiaphas' recommendation of Jesus' execution was about preserving the power and stability of the Jewish leaders and their fragile relationship with Rome. Although Caiaphas was the high priest during Jesus' ministry, Annas, his father-in-law, still held considerable influence. Even though the Romans had deposed Annas, he was still referred to as a high priest, showing just how much power he retained. When Jesus was arrested in the Garden of Gethsemane, he was first brought before Annas for questioning. Annas then sent him to Caiaphas, who was officially the high priest at the time. The Sanhedrin, the Jewish council, also got involved, and they held a sort of trial at Caiaphas's house. During this trial, Jesus faced a barrage of false testimony and conflicting accusations, but he remained mostly silent, not offering any defense against the charges. As the trial went on, Caiaphas struggled to find enough evidence to justify condemning Jesus to death. In a moment of desperation, Caiaphas directly asked Jesus if he was the Messiah, the Son of God. Jesus' response was enough for Caiaphas to indict him. Caiaphas tore his own clothes in a dramatic display and declared Jesus guilty of blasphemy. The council didn't have the power to execute, so they handed him over first to a mob and then to Roman governor Pontius Pilate, who eventually gave in to the crowd's demands, leading to Jesus' crucifixion. The actions of Annas and Caiaphas were important in the events that led to Jesus' death, showcasing the complex interplay of religion and politics in that era. So let's now examine how this historical connection impacts the modern-day discovery of Caiaphas' testament. The impact and legacy of Caiaphas' testament. As news of Caiaphas' testament spread, reactions poured in from all corners of the world. Scholars debated its authenticity, theologians grappled with its implications, and the public was captivated by the idea of a high priest tormented by his decisions. But the story doesn't end there. Having looked into the historical context in which Caiaphas lived, we must now fully understand the significance of Caiaphas' last testament. The significance of this testament goes beyond theology. Theology is the study and exploration of religious beliefs and the nature of God. It involves critical reflection on matters of faith, including the interpretation of scripture, doctrine, and moral principles. It provides a rare glimpse into the mindset of the Jewish leadership during a time of great turmoil and change. For Caiaphas, this vision in his testament was more than a nightmare. It was a sign that he had made a colossal mistake in condemning Jesus. Though his acts at the time were considered to be very mean, as crucifixion was the Roman method of execution reserved for the worst criminals, but for Christians, it became symbolic of Jesus' sacrifice for humanity's sins. His resurrection after 3 days and his eventual ascension, a potent proof of his divine nature. These findings have the potential to disrupt both Jewish and Christian traditions, casting doubt on past narratives and making us reevaluate the high priest's precarious position in one of the most significant historical moments. In his own opinion, Caiaphas was taking the appropriate measures to preserve law and order and shield his people from Roman reprisals. Despite being severe, his actions appear to be influenced by his position. He was a man torn between the passionate aspirations of his people and the oppressive demands of an invading force. However, as with many things of public relevance, that isn't how everyone sees it. Indeed, an upswing of comments has erupted among the academic and religious sectors in response to the publication of Caiaphas's testament, and we will examine some of them briefly. The reactions to Caiaphas's testament have been all over the place. To some, this testament makes Caiaphas a more relatable character, more human. Some theologians see the testament as proof of a higher plan. They think Caiaphas's visions were divine messages, showing that even those who opposed Jesus were part of a bigger plan. Other theologians are more cautious. To them, the testament borders more on Caiaphas's guilt and fear. The public reaction has been just as mixed, and this discovery has sparked a lot of talk about history, faith, and how people think. While some see the testament as a confirmation of their faith, others view it as a challenge. Some groups think the testament is just a fascinating historical find, while others see it as more of a spiritual or even a conspiracy thing. For many believers, the testament has strengthened their faith, giving them what they see as solid evidence of divine intervention in history. At the same time, the testament has also made skeptics more vocal. For them, this document is a reminder of how complicated and contradictory religious texts and historical records can be. Many experts are calling for more study to figure out what Caiaphas's testament really means for our understanding of early Christian and Jewish history. In academic circles, the testament has sparked heated debates. Historians and archaeologists are analyzing the document, also arguing about what it really means. Overall, the testament has become a symbol of the never-ending quest for truth. It reminds us that history is full of surprises and that what we know about the past is always changing. It also shows just how much a single discovery can shake up what we think we know. These findings have the potential to disrupt both Jewish and Christian traditions, casting doubt on past narratives and making us reevaluate the high priest's significance in one of the most significant historical moments. On top of that, the timely discovery of this ossuary, with its intricate designs and inscriptions, serves as a reminder that the figures in the holy books were real people, living in complex times, making difficult decisions. This humanizes them, ultimately challenging us to reconsider our judgments of historical figures and appreciate the complexity of their situations and decisions they made. As we continue to uncover the past, we are reminded again by this discovery that history is not just a collection of dates and events, it's a story of human struggles, doubts, and ultimately, the search for truth. With the story all laid out, let's talk about the archaeological detail of Caiaphas's discovery as it affects our modern society. Uncovering the tomb. Detailed findings from Caiaphas's ossuary. Workers were just trying to expand a road when they suddenly hit an ancient burial cave. It wasn't just any cave. Rather, it was full of ancient ossuaries or bone boxes from the 1st century. The workers, who were excited about their discovery and eager to understand the truth, facts, and overall significance of what they had just discovered, quickly sent a message to the authorities informing them of what had happened and requesting professional aid. When the experts from the Israel Antiquities Authority came to check it out, they found a discovery truly mind-blowing. A bunch of ossuaries, 12 to be exact, but one of them really stood out. It was more elaborate than the others, decorated with beautiful designs, and had an inscription that got everyone excited. The original inscription read, Yosef bar Caiaphas, which translates to Joseph, son of Caiaphas. This was huge because it directly linked the find to the High Priest Caiaphas, who happened to be a significant figure from the New Testament from the era of Bible days. Let's talk a bit about these ossuaries. Back in the Second Temple period, which is when all this happened, Jewish burial customs were a bit different from what we're used to today. When someone died, they would be placed in a tomb until their body decomposed. After that, the bones would be collected and placed in a limestone box called an ossuary. This practice was pretty common among the Jewish elite, who believed in bodily resurrection. So the Caiaphas ossuary isn't just any old box, rather it's quite fancy with detailed floral and geometric designs, indicating it belonged to someone of high status. The ossuary itself is a limestone box, about 37 centimeters high, 75 centimeters long, and 25 centimeters wide, with inscriptions in Aramaic, which was the everyday language at that time. The designs on it match other high-status burials from the era. Interestingly, some of the other ossuaries found in the same cave also had names that might be related to Caiaphas's family. This makes the identification even stronger. Finding the Caiaphas ossuary is a big deal, not just for biblical archaeology, but for history as a whole. It helps bridge the gap between ancient texts and modern archaeology, giving us a clearer picture of the historical context. Of course, there's always some debate. Some scholars argue that the name Caiaphas might have been more common than we think, so this ossuary might not necessarily belong to the famous high priest. Others also point out that there aren't any additional inscriptions directly linking this ossuary to the high priest's office. But even with those doubts, the combination of the name, the elaborate design, and the context in which it was found makes a pretty strong case. The Caiaphas ossuary is part of a larger collection of finds from the Second Temple period. This includes things like the Dead Sea Scrolls and artifacts from the Temple Mount. All these discoveries together give us a richer understanding of Jewish life, religious practices, and the political scene under Roman rule. After its discovery, the ossuary was carefully documented and preserved by the Israel Antiquities Authority. It has been displayed in various museums, including the Israel Museum in Jerusalem. This discovery continues to shed light on a crucial period in Jewish and Christian history, showing just how interconnected our past and present are. It is a reminder that history is always full of surprises, and sometimes those surprises can change the way we see the world. What do you think of Caiaphas's decision to sentence Jesus to death? Let us know in the comments. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the following video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.